A 2-week-long suspension of the local Disabled American Veterans Chapter has been lifted. DAV Chapter 32 was put on a 90-day suspension on September 24th. In an email we got on Friday, West Virginia State DAV Adjutant and CEO Adam Greathouse says the suspension was lifted this past Wednesday. Our Megan Marshall has been working on the story for a few days now and recently spoke with DAV National's Inspector General Edward Hartman to find out what happened. She joins us now in the studio. Megan.
Thank you, Logan. Last Saturday, members of DAV Chapter 32 were denied entry and kicked off the property at a conference in Summersville. One of the members, Jerry Smith, says the chapter had been suspended over a dispute of a vehicle given to the chapter from the state chapter. The local chapter would have used the car for veteran services like delivering meals and transporting veterans.
Back in April, officials with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and the West Virginia DAV signed an agreement to give a VA-owned vehicle to the DAV. DAV National Inspector General Edward Hartman says this transaction violated a grant agreement between the state-level DAV and the VA.
None of those individuals who signed the agreement or signed over ownership, if you will, of that vehicle had any authority to do that. But the grant states that, these vehicles are to be used solely for transporting veterans to and from the VA medical centers, and they will be owned and maintained and provided insurance by the federal government Department of Veterans Affairs.
The problem wasn't realized until around the end of September when an email was sent to National. Hartman says the officials involved from the VA and state and local DAV were not aware of the grant requirements.
Neither he nor anyone at the department was aware of the language and the requirement for that van or that vehicle to stay within the VA system, that it belonged to the VA. So this was tainted from the very beginning.
Hartman says the state chapter gave an order for the local chapter to return the vehicle. When the car was not returned, the chapter was then placed on the 90-day suspension. Last Saturday, members of DAV Chapter 32 were denied entry and kicked off the property at a conference in Summersville. Hartman says the national bylaws explain why the chapter was not allowed to enter.
While under suspension and not under trusteeship, no meeting shall be held in the name of the subordinate unit. However, the group's participation was in the name of Chapter 32. So that's where they stepped outside the lines.
State DAV officials collected the vehicle this past Tuesday, and the local chapter suspension lifted on Wednesday.
There's a lot more to this story. You can read all those details in my online story at WTAP.com. Back to you, Logan.